Children laugh the same way everywhere. When a child laughs, something opens. Their curiosity wakes up. Their confidence grows, and learning becomes natural. When children laugh, their brains experience a boost of positive emotions, and those positive emotions create the perfect brain to learn better. Laughter is not just a fun moment in the classroom. Laughter is not a waste of time. Laughter matters. Before becoming a teacher, I worked for 13 years in banking. 13 years, me. I was doing well professionally. It was a good job. But little by little, I started to notice that the priorities of the system were not aligned with mine. That financial interests came before people. Then I became a mother, and something deeply changed inside me. I started to wonder, how can I contribute to the world? And I decided to become a teacher. And it was then, more than 20 years ago, when I went back to the university, that I met a professor who shaped the way I understand education forever, Ana Forés. She is now the director of the Department of Neuroeducation at Universitat de Barcelona. But back then, she was already talking about the brain and about emotions. And she was very insistent on one idea. Positive emotions improve the brain's ability to learn better. And laughter is a powerful emotional regulator. Since then, humor has always been one of my tools as a teacher, especially when most of my teaching career has been with students whose first language was not the language I had to teach in. Before sharing words, we shared laughters. When I moved from Barcelona to Charlotte, I kept asking myself, will my Spanish sense of humor work here? Will my students understand my jokes? And I discovered something beautiful. Children laugh the same way everywhere. The joy is the same. The reactions are the same. The sparkle in their eyes is exactly the same. Because laughter is a universal language and is the language of human connection. So coming from a different country, what better way to connect with my students than by sharing my identity? I was born and raised in Catalonia. Catalonia is a region in the northeast of Spain. It has its own language, and it has its own traditions. Some of those traditions might be a little bit, unexpected. Let me give you an example that I like to share with my students. It is called El Tío de Nadal. El Tío de Nadal is a wooden log that families place in their living rooms around Christmas. And children take care of the tío, of the log. They cover it with a blanket, they feed him, they take good care of it. And on Christmas Day, they gather around the log with sticks, and they hit the tío. And they hit the tío and they sing a song in Catalanese. Caga, tío, ametlles i torrons, si no vols cagar, et donaré un cop de bastó. That sounds kind of a sweet kid song, right? Well, let me translate it into English. It would be something like, poop, log, poop. Poop as presents. If you don't poop as presents, we will hit you harder with the stick. So when I tell this story to my students, they look at me and they ask, so Ms. Tamayo, you're saying that you hit a lot and it poops you presents? They say. And I say, yes, exactly. And they laugh. Sometimes, though, it's more difficult to find the bright side of life. Sometimes what happens outside the classroom enters the classroom. In my beautiful school, Charlotte Language Academy, most of our students come from Latino families. Last November, there was a visible presence of ICE agent and Border Patrol in Charlotte. My 6-year-old students felt it. Some of them did not come to school. Some came quieter and scared. Some did not understand why their parents could not take them to school and had to be taken by other volunteer families. As a teacher, this is a very delicate situation. Your students look for answers and you don't have them. But you cannot pretend that nothing is happening. It was happening a lot. You need to be present. You need to be emotionally available. One of those mornings, one of my students whose parents work at Charlotte Airport came very happy to the classroom. He wanted to share some good news. And he raised his hand and said, yesterday, my parents saw an ICE agent. At this moment, some of my students went on alert mode, but he continued. Yesterday, my parents saw an ICE agent at the airport, and he was flying to Hawaii. ICE agent, Hawaii, kind of a peculiar combination, no? And I couldn't resist. We needed to build a story from there. So I told my students that Hawaii is a beautiful place, sandy beaches, palm trees, basically paradise. And I asked them, what do you think this ICE agent is doing in Hawaii? And we created a story. We named the ICE agent Manolo because we were in the Spanish class and we love Spanish names. So what do you think Manolo was doing in Hawaii? And then one student said, well, Manolo wanted to go to the beach, but he had forgotten his swimsuit. Okay, all right, then I kept asking, what happened next? And then another student continued, saying, well, then Manolo decided to go to a beach where nobody was there and decided to swim in his underwear. I was like, okay. At that point, yeah, my class was starting to laugh. But they continue, and what happened next? And then another student said, and then Manolo was hit by a wave, and he ended up in the most crowded beach in all Hawaii. My class was full of laughter, and finally one student shouting said, and Manolo was running all over the place in his underwear. What started as a tense moment ended up in connection, in some joy. And I know laughter is not going to fix problems, but it allows our students to breathe. And sometimes breathing is what they need in order to keep learning. And this is what my professor Anna, a neuroscience, tells us. Researchers like Marie-Helen Imordino-Young discovered that we feel, therefore we learn. And a Portuguese neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio, said beautifully that we are not thinking machines that feel, we are feeling machines that think. We, as teachers, plan lessons, we plan assessments, we plan activities. But we also need to think about the emotional state our students are in. And this is not about putting funny cat videos on YouTube. This is about you, your ability to create community with your classroom. Because other researchers, like Robert Provine said, people are 30 times more likely to laugh when they are with other people than when they are alone. So this is about you, your authenticity, your genuine interest in your students. Please, listen to what your students say. You can build so much learning from there. And spend time getting to know your students. Spend time letting them get to know you. Because that time is unique. And your uniqueness and their uniqueness creates the magic. Do not let anybody tell you how to connect with your students. You are the one that spends 8 hours a day with them. You know better. Be yourself, be authentic. In the US, there is a strong focus on data. My first graders, they go through a lot of assessments. Beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, DBOS reading, I ready math, district assessments, progress monitoring, aggressive monitoring. Really? Aggressive. I was scared the first time I heard it. And don't get me wrong, I know data is important. It allows us to make better decisions. It brings us valuable information. But I sometimes feel something very gently. In Spain, the student is more clearly at the center, not the results, not the teaching to test, but the student, the child, their emotional world, their relationship with the teacher. Here, the pressure to prove learning through numbers can push quietly the human part to the side. And I say that with great respect for the American system and for the incredible teachers that work inside it. But I am also very proud of what my Spanish background training, what Ana Forés instilled in me. They taught me to first look at the child and then the data. To first listen to the child and then assess. To first connect with the child and then instruct. That brings me to my last message. If there is a piece of data you remember from your students, what is it? Scores, grades, or the moment he or she felt safe enough to be him or herself in the classroom? And if there is a piece of data I invite you to pay attention to, it would be this one. How many times did you genuinely laugh with your students? How many times did your students laugh with you? That is important data. And there is no spreadsheet for this data. I'm sorry, admin. This data is in your hearts and your students' hearts. And it doesn't matter if it comes from an ICE agent that forgets his swimsuit or a wooden log that poops presents, because children laugh the same way everywhere.